Well, good afternoon. I guess actually, sorry, it's not. It's evening here. It's afternoon for Alexandra, who's on the other side of this if you're watching, listening. Thank you for coming to Lamentivo Podcast for another episode. And today I have Alexandra Hunter. I came across her content a while ago, and what I was just talking to her before we started recording this is that she has this channel. She talks about life, like all aspects, different aspects of life. But one thing that stuck out to me in her series that she's done is talking about being single at 41. And I know we had a younger lady here in her 20s that was talking about being single, and that was a very unique perspective, but it was really cool to me to see a lady who some would say, I guess, in quotes, over the hill, though, you know, which we'll talk about in this podcast isn't accurate, but she was talking about like how hard it is. She's very honest about the lament of like wanting the dream, but it's not happening now, or it's not happening the way she thought. And she's just really vulnerable, sweet. Her posts are really encouraging because it has like the hard days, the good days. And she recently posted a blog post about how to have a funeral for your dreams, which I just loved that title. And I think, regardless of singleness or whatever area, so many times there are dreams that either aren't going the way we thought they would or they don't happen. And we have to come to this point of acceptance. But acceptance is different without any lamenting. If you just skip the lament, you haven't really accepted anything. You're just pretending to be brave. And that is really, I say that, and I don't mean to be harsh about it, but it is actually the bravery to actually admit to yourself how sad you are
Yeah.
about something. So, anyway, she is here to talk about her life. I'm so excited. So, Alexandra, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Yes, thank you so much for reaching out about doing this. I'm so excited. I love the concept of this podcast. I mean, the title alone just speaks to my soul. So I'm
Yeah.
super excited to just sort of chat with you and unpack a lot of things.
Well, exactly. I mean, and that's why, like, I was like, yes, because the core of your content is so similar to mine in that aspect of lament. I wanted to ask you before we get started, just so people who want to be familiar get to know your content more. What drove you, like, what was the passion that you're like, you know what, I'm going to go online and I'm going to be vulnerable and share about my life? What was the decision that made you do that?
That is a good question. I don't really know if there was like a firm decision. I feel like it was a little bit of a trickle effect as just slowly. I think and I didn't recognize this at the time, but I have learned that I'm an external processor. So in many ways, I
Hmm.
was processing out loud and I sort of daily vlogged with myself anyways. And then I just started to like kind of bring them to life on like content channels and social media and stuff. In that though, I know people either personally or encountering people who were facing a lot of the similar struggles, but kind of
Hmm.
always maintaining this brave face, and feeling like they had to. And I can think of friends in particular who were really struggling with some like heavy either loss or disappointment or things like that, and just felt like they just had to smile and be like, everything is fine. And every time I asked, how are you doing? Everything was great, even though I knew things weren't great. And I started to relate to those people and saying, like, well, it's not great for me. And then I would just sort of
Hmm.
start talking about why that wasn't great for me. And that sort of started opening new conversations. So I think that's a little bit of like where it started. And it was just it wasn't intentional. I didn't really sit down to like necessarily do it. I've always felt this kind of itch in my spirit and my soul to share my life very out loud and very boldly, mostly out of relatability and just like the connections that it's built. And social media was sort of just a natural next step.
Yeah.
But I didn't it's gone in so many directions that I didn't anticipate, but I have just found comfort for myself, but comfort for others from the feedback that I get of just sort of like authenticity is such a catchphrase right now, but just sort of
Yeah.
being like just honest and conveying. And when I first started my content journey, I was not a Christian. I didn't believe in God really. Like I loosely was like, yeah, maybe, but it was not a core part of who I was. So a lot of my story was the sadness and sharing that very openly, which was very relatable. But then it was kind of like this just open-ended, like, okay, like, so is the decision we're just going to be sad? Like, like, are we just going to sort of
Hmm.
grieve through this? And 3 years ago, I became a Christian and totally changed my entire world in so many different directions. But part of that was that it added the second half to the story of yes, there's grief. Yes, there's loss. That is a part of this earthly world, but there's still a tremendous amount of hope. And not even that the circumstances change or anything like that, but this just overarching belief that you will be okay, that it is not resting solely in your hands, that there is somebody who knows so intimately what you're going through, who is to some degree controlling what you are going through and has an end purpose for this. And then that's where I think my content really started taking a turn and bringing in a whole different type of crowd and community because I think people were starting to see like, wow, I relate to the hardness, but I'm really excited and I want a piece of this joy and hope that this person is
Hmm.
experiencing. And I think that is just where pieces started to click and things started to take off. And it's been amazing both for myself and I hope for followers as well.
What was that like for you when you became a Christian and then you were going to become open about that on your content? Because I know that can be frightening if you, because, politics, religion, these are like the two topics people
Yes.
divide over the most. How did you approach that? Like, were you worried about that or were you excited? How was the reception?
I was, I think I was determined to some degree. I don't know if excited is the right word, but it was so quickly becoming such an intimate day-to-day part of my life that it was hard for me to share content without bringing it up. And so I was like, how can I make this fit into my original content?
Hmm.
That can't be achieved. You can't make it fit into your content. It's sort of the content's going to start to become fit into that. I was very, very, very timid in the beginning and actually shared a lot, not even so much content, but more on like stories of just like, oh, like, surprise, I believe in God. Just want to put that out there. I don't want to make this weird or like whatever, and a lot of that. And I have a lot of friends. I mean, I came from a very heavy background of very the antithesis of Christianity and just a lot of like partying and all different walks of life and lifestyles and like all of that stuff. So all of my friends and my like close connections and stuff like that are just like all over the map on belief
Hmm.
systems and values and like all that stuff. And then I sort of overnight disappeared from that world and was like, I've had a supernatural encounter. I am now a Christian. And I was really scared about how that would be received. I would say, I honestly, I can't even, I'm sure people have unfollowed. I'm sure somebody was like, this is terrible. I don't want to do this anymore. If that happened, I didn't know about it. But some of the most supportive people in my life through that journey are the people from my past and who have expressed like,
Hmm.
this is not our journey, but we love this for you. We can see that you are thriving and that this is just like such a good fit for you and have been so incredibly supportive of that. And it's grown over time. Like I here or there might loosely be like, I was praying this morning or like just like little touches of it. And now I'm just like blatant, like this morning while I was talking to God, and it's just it grew from there. But I would, I think that there is value in just letting it grow and not like forcing yourself and be like, okay, well, I have to be overtly like Christian now and like, bring
Right.
that into the content because at the same time you're like a baby giraffe. You're also learning how to stand on your own feet. I didn't even fully understand. I knew I believed in God. I didn't know where it extended beyond that. So as my content evolved, or sorry, as my belief in values and stuff sort of evolved, so did my content. So it was uncomfortable. It still is a little uncomfortable. I think now as my followers are growing as well. Like I know a little bit more of like some of people's mindset behind it and like whether they like it or not, but I love God and Jesus so much. I it just falls out of my mouth. I can hardly contain it. So, and that's just sort of been the evolution. It didn't start that way, but that's sort of where we are now.
Well, yeah, tell me about that. How did that, you said you had a supernatural encounter. What was kind of like your life before in this, in your attitude toward God, and then what changed?
I grew up like very religious, very going to church, very, I don't know if even well versed in Christianity is quite the right word, but I was well versed in religion. I was well versed in the do this, don't do that.
Okay.
The concept of, hell and, we're trying to avoid these things and stuff like that. So a lot of things I think people relate to if they're brought up in a religious background. I had a belief in God, I think, probably from a young age, partly just because that's what I was raised with. I definitely had no relationship with him and I had no um I'm not even sure I understood the concept of having a relationship with him. I don't think I understood that that was something that you could even have. And I definitely was unfamiliar with the idea of salvation by grace and by faith.
Hmm.
That was something I learned only probably like 5, 6-ish years ago. But like really like all the gears clicked and I was like, oh, this is what salvation is.
Hmm.
Before that, I would say like for a long time lived kind of the religious Christian lifestyle of, I was a pretty good kid. I wasn't getting into trouble in high school or anything like that. When I got into college, I was introduced into a whole new world of all different sorts types of of life and
Yeah.
ultimately went through a very traumatic experience in that and had had no coping mechanisms for that, no healthy ones anyways, and like no great place to really churn or it felt like a great place to churn. And so I went looking for the people who seemed to be coping with their life situations well or thriving despite their circumstances. And a lot of that fell into kind of the classic like drugs, alcohol, sex,
Yeah.
like just promiscuous lifestyles and just like all of that stuff. And I fell into that really quickly and really heavily and it kind of worked in the sense of I it gave me a space just to really be honestly mostly blacked out from my circumstances, which was what made me able to tolerate my circumstances, which was helpful in a way. And kind of the
Yeah.
more you get into that lifestyle, the more you get into that lifestyle of one element adds shame and then you feel shame about that. So you kind of get into it more and then that adds more shame. And it's just this stack about stack and stack. And then it just kind of becomes your identity. It becomes who you are. It becomes your community. It becomes so much of who you are. And I don't necessarily think it was like I hate God or I was mad at God. I think there was anger at God. I think some of the circumstances that happened in my life held anger at God, but I was also
Hmm.
kind of like, I'm not even sure if I'm angry at something that's real. Like this, you could be
Right.
real, you can't even be real. I'm not even sure if this is real anger. But most of all, I just felt like if you were real, there was no space for you in my life
Hmm.
because it was, I felt very ashamed of the life that I was living and the choices that I was making because first I did them to cope, then I did them because they became habit and comfort. And then I was like, I was a little bit more aware of like they weren't the best choices. And I just felt really ashamed of that.
Hmm.
And so I was like, if God is real, I'm not interested in it. I distinctly remember thinking, if he's real, then when he comes back, I'll just say a quick little prayer, like right before everybody goes up to heaven. And like, I'll do like my handshake then and like things will be good and up to heaven I'll go. That felt like the best of both worlds. So that, I mean, that was probably like a good 20 years ish. No, maybe like 17, 18 years of my life. Just
Hmm.
really being involved in that. And to a point, like when you get that involved in it, you stop recognizing what's hurting you, what's helping you, if you're moving forwards or backwards. I knew I felt very stuck, but I didn't really feel I mean, I looked like I was doing everything that everybody around me was doing, so it didn't really feel like I was out of place. And I was like, this must
Yeah.
be it. And like, I knew a lot of people who were thriving. Like, I think a lot of people thrive in that lifestyle and go on to live very big lives and stuff like that. So it's not just, I think sometimes there's the misconception that it's like, oh, you like drink and do drugs, you were, sleeping in the gutter. And I'm like, no, a lot of these people were, working really big, wonderful jobs and, getting promoted and like all that stuff too. So you can live a
Right.
very functioning, good life. There was no hope in that situation though. And I was just in one situation after another that was less and less hopeful. I was very frequently involved with, namely, like just bad relationships that were just heavy and dark and full of chaos and like just all sorts of different things.
Hmm.
And so I was like, this is the life I'm living. I feel like I'm in too deep. I can't really turn around now. So I'm gonna like kind of claim this life. But at the same time, I was losing more and more and more hope all the time. And I for maybe like halfway through that, I really was battling really heavily with mental health to the point where I became suicidal, but not in the sense of like I didn't in some ways I made attempts. I had like cries for help, but I just resigned from living. I stopped eating, I stopped going to work, I stopped
Hmm.
showering. I just was like, and I had told everybody I was like, my plan is to lay here and die. Like, don't save me, don't help me. Like, I don't want to do that. And that was definitely one of my lowest points for sure. And a lot of people stepped in, literally ransomed me, rescued me from that situation. I ended up having to go live with my parents for a while and be in all sorts of mental health care and stuff like that. And I kind of turned a corner for a little while, but once people felt like I was kind of stable enough, I went back to where I was living at the time and just immediately fell back into the old lifestyle. I didn't have good systems set up or like next steps really set up to prevent me
Hmm.
from doing that. And so I just got re-involved. And um, through that whole journey, there were like little blips where I would pop up and sort of be a more functioning person. I was more sober. I was staying away from bad relationships, but it would last for like 6 months, 8 months, maybe at best. And then I would somehow fall back into something or the other. Um, and in like around 2021, I had just come off of my longest streak of sobriety, of staying away from bad and dangerous relationships, and was really starting to get what felt like my life on track. And I was also starting to have a very strong interest in faith. I had not given my life to Jesus at that point, and I had definitely not like living in a place of surrender, but I was definitely getting very interested. And I was working with a
Hmm.
mentor, reading my Bible slowly, like in little snippets, and talking more and more with people about it. But in that process, especially being sober, all of the emotions, the grief, the shame were rising up because I was able to notice them more. And they'd always been there. I just had been so out of my mind that I wasn't really noticing them.
Yeah.
And they became so overwhelming. And we entered into COVID. I got laid off from my job. I moved to
Hmm.
a new city where I didn't know anybody, and all of these emotions were coming up. We were all isolated in our homes. There wasn't really like a place, a therapist to even go to. There was a lot going on in my family that was kind of keeping any of our family members from really being able to talk and be in relationship at the time. Um, and I was like, I can't do this. Like, I'm gonna die. I felt like is what was
Oh,
going on. And
yeah.
so I went back to what I knew. And so I just was like, all right, well, I know that drugs, sex, and alcohol work and kind of keep me numb. And I went back to that, but I think I carried so much shame that I was going back to that I was like, I'm just going all in. And I did. I put every card on the table. I went crazy. Like if I was crazy before, which I was like next level crazy the second time around. And just at that point, I had just given up. I was like, there's just no hope. There's no getting out of this. I'm going to ride this wave until basically it kills me and let that be that. Like I fought the good fight. I've done what I can.
Hmm.
And um, I, it was March of 2023. And I remember my last like real intense drug and alcohol experience had been in January, although I had still been dabbling with it in March. But at that point, my body was getting so sick from
Hmm.
a lifestyle that I was physically struggling. I was physically like unwell.
Hmm.
And March 2023, I was on my couch and I was like, I'm gonna die. Like I am so unwell physically and emotionally. And I didn't know what else to do. I was content. I wasn't even bothered with the fact that I would just lay on that couch and die. I was like, well, that makes sense. That's kind of the end I was going to. I didn't really desire to live past that moment.
Hmm.
But I just laid there and I was just like, God, if you're real, I can't do this anymore. And I said, and this is so weird, very weird at the time, less weird now that I understand the significance of this. But I said, I can't do this anymore. Tear the veil. And when I spoke those words, something I felt something just physically lift off my body in a supernatural way.
Hmm.
And I felt like I could just hear the Lord in my heart say, you don't have to do this anymore. You don't have to carry any of this anymore. Everything that you've been carrying for the last 20 plus years, like it's done. I will take it, but you have to make a decision. You have to choose this and you have to let me help you. And truly by the grace of God, like the power of the Holy Spirit, because I shouldn't have made that choice because it is so counterintuitive to everything that I was feeling. And I
Yeah.
said, like, okay, like I want that. And I
Hmm.
just feel like the Lord was like, take up your mat and walk. And from that day forth, I so transformed. Like I picked up the Bible in that same day and like it was different. I read it differently. Like it said different things than it ever said before.
Wow.
I was just so overly consumed with the idea of God and Jesus and understanding more. And I hated church. I never wanted to set foot in church again. And I was like, I just understood that I was like, if I'm going to survive this, I really need to find a church. And I Googled a church near me, and I ended up going to a church that just God could not have picked a better church church for me. They just sucked me in, and they're designed for people who are very broken and coming from all sorts of different backgrounds, and just really absorbed me and loved me and have nurtured me since then. And I think that is part of what's allowed me to be so bold in my content about God is because I'm like, it was supernatural. You don't understand that 1 hour before I was going to lay down and die, and 1 hour after I was a different person. Like, and
Hmm.
if I can know that level of freedom and that level of hope and that level of joy, which is surpasses my circumstances, my whole world could fall apart. I still feel very confident that I would have hope, joy, and peace. I'm like, if I know that and I'm not sharing that with other people, like that's actually criminal. Like how can I watch other people go through either similar things as me or at least have those same feelings as me and not offer them the same sort of solution that just it's not like, oh, I just felt better. I skinned my knee and I got a band-aid. I'm like, no, I was shattered into a million pieces and now I'm not shattered into a single piece. Like I am a whole being again. And
Wow.
I can't, it's knitted into my being now. I can't stop talking about it. And I feel transformed is the best way I can say it. It was the best experience I've ever had, the hardest experience I've ever had. Being a Christian is the hardest thing I've ever done. But it has been, oh my gosh, I would do it 1,000 times over. I would do it all over again, times a million.
That's so interesting you say that because I know, some people listening are like, oh, she's just really on a high of Christianity now. Um, but I think it's so interesting when you say they're a Christian, being a Christian is so hard. And I think it's so important that that's said because I think it is like it's a trendy like, I'm feeling good. Christianity makes me feel good, but I mean for me being a Christian has been heartbreaking,
Yes,
beautiful. It's like a really hard mix because it's dying to self and
yes,
like um yeah, it's just like and then realizing that there's someone who is in charge of all things and who's who holds life in his hands. I mean, it's just like all, and then realizing how little you understand and then desiring to understand more. And so when you say like being a Christian is hard, what is hard about it for you?
I mean, honestly, I feel like every piece of it, um, it is, I think what you said, like the dying to self. I don't think that I even understood what that meant. Like, I'm like, what do you mean you're dying to self? But
Yeah.
Christianity and faith in God is so counterintuitive to our natural wiring. The
Yeah.
idea that my security can and should be in something and someone that I've never physically seen, I've never physically heard. I can't even say with, I 100,000% proof that he's real. I strongly, deeply believe that. I wake up every day and go through the reminders of myself of why that is real and why I will die on that hill. But there are days where my faith wavers and I'm like, when it gets really hard and when I'm counting on God for things that I can't see how that could be solved solved by God, I'm like, remind me that you're real. Remind me that, there's some parts where I'm like 100%, this guy has to be real, no doubt. There's these other parts where I'm like, I don't know if I'm willing to put my bet on that entirely because if I do get that wrong, that's going to be a really big, scary loss of security or finances or, whatever that situation may be.
Yeah.
Um, to make a choice to do something that's counterintuitive to your nature and to have to decide to do that every single minute of every single day. I described to people, I was like, it feels like, I mean, we talked about this in the Bible, but like, it feels like death. You walk at the end of the day and you're just like, you feel a little bloody and like beaten up. Like you can have a good day. It's not that the day has gone bad. You've just had to fight against your nature in so many different aspects. The desire to respond to somebody in such a way, the desire to have a thought that just is not like for your good or is godly or just all of these things, that you're
Yeah.
going against. And like the concept of putting your faith in something that's not you, who is the most, I mean, we're highly unreliable, but it feels like we're the safest place to be is ourselves. And to like
Yeah.
step outside of that and put it into something else is terrifying. And to do that over and over and over. And even just like the loss of identity has been one of the hardest things for me of I spent, let's see, I became a Christian when I was about 37. So 37 years of my life believing and building a certain identity, which I would have
Hmm.
been like, it's me. And then when I became a Christian and started building this relationship with God, and He revealed all of these different elements that were not the root of my identity, meant I had to take out all these pieces. If we're wearing armor, if you will, of our identity, you have to slowly take that off. And as you take those things off, you feel less and less secure because now you're getting down to an unarmored person because that's just the loss of your identity. And I described that to people. I was like, it feels like getting skinned alive without anesthesia. Like you're just like, you're laying there, there's no anesthesia, and just layer
Hmm.
by layer, things are being pulled off. And there's so much attachment. You don't even understand how attached you are to the elements of your identity until you start to lose them. The best experience ever. I have felt more free. I felt more hope and more joy than I ever have as those pieces have been taken off of me. But it hurts so badly. And it's a slow process. It's not, sometimes it is a band-aid getting ripped off. And some days it's just like inch by inch chipping away at it. And it's just so hard. And to go against even the cultural norms of just like, okay, well, if that feels rough, just stop doing it because that is sort of like a lot of what we do. Stop doing this or do something else. And you're like, I'm gonna stick with this because I genuinely believe with all my heart that this is the right thing to do. That hurts too, because it's like you begin to feel a little bit isolated, set up
Yeah.
set apart in not a good way, and a loss of your identity, and just so many things are falling apart at the same time.
Yeah.
But as those things fall apart that actually are weighing on you that you're not even aware are weighing on you, you feel lighter and lighter. So it's the death and life all at the same time, which talks about so much in scripture that never made sense to me until I started going through the experience. But it is so hard. This is significantly harder than any life I've ever lived before. That life was darker. This life is lighter, but that life was easier and this life is harder. But
Hmm.
I would choose harder and lighter than I would easy and darker. Like this is just so much better.
It's and when you're talking, it's so interesting when you're talking about the identity aspect because it's like you're right. Even as a Christian, you have so much that you think is your identity, even though you don't say that. And then as the Lord works on different aspects of your life, it's like going back to your identity is the fact that you're my child and that like your entire being is mine. Like you're made for my delight
Hmm.
and my and the work that I have you to do, and I want you to embrace that like life in the garden that started in the beginning where it was like before all the sin entered where our identity was completely like we walked with God. And but we're so far removed from that, and there's this all this sin that has come since then that like our identity is, as you said, like the small things that really feel like in the grand scheme of eternity are super small, like they're everything to us,
Hmm. Hmm.
and so when they're gone or when they're getting taken away, you're like, I can't do this. Like, what is going
Mm.
on? Why is this going away? um but, I wanted to ask you because, and feel if you don't want to answer this, feel free not to, but um I think growing up as a kid, I grew up in a Christian home, but my home was, and I praise the Lord for this. The Lord somehow through all the mess was able to really get to my heart to believe the truth about the gospel, but I still really believed wrongly about God as a father figure. I really struggled. I really thought I was always in trouble. I was so like, if I sinned, how many times do I say sorry? I was really trapped
Mm.
in this like idea that God the Father was just this really hard taskmaster, which made
Yeah.
it just really hard. And I, even as a believer, would cope with some of my struggles with like, I remember when I was like a teenager, I don't know when it happened or what, but all the hormones are going. And I also remember just, I don't know what happened, what position I was in, but I figured I started masturbating when I was a little kid. And I felt so much relief from that. Like it was
Mm.
just like this, like, and I didn't even understand what was happening as a kid, right? You're like young, so you don't even understand. This is like you're getting these sexual feelings, all this stuff, and you're like, what's happening? But it felt really good. Like it helped relieve the stress. And I knew in the back of my mind, this is sinful. This isn't
Yeah.
right. But I really enjoyed the block out, like kind of what
Mm.
you said with different things than what I'm describing. But it was just like I didn't have to think about the trauma. I didn't have to think about how mad God was at me in my mind perceived. It was just like I am getting rid of this. And that was something I struggled with all, off and on until halfway through college when the Lord really just I'll never forget, and I'm interviewing you, so give me grace here, but I'll never forget I was in my dorm alone, depressed, and I was struggling with this at one point in my, I don't know what, sophomore year or something. And I just said to the Lord, I don't know what I said. I just said, Lord, like, I feel so alone and I just need you to bring somebody. Like, I don't
Mhm.
know. I can't leave this situation because I don't want to feel bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all of a sudden there was a knock on my door and I opened it, right? And I'm feeling like complete embarrassment in my mind knowing, what I had just done. And it was a friend of mine who I didn't even get together with that much in college. And she said, Hey, we're going off to do something fun. I just thought of you randomly. Like, I want you to come with us, like, right
Oh,
now. And like just seeing the like that was God's grace and like
yeah,
he came to my door and didn't go, you are such a horrible person, I
yeah,
can't
yeah,
believe. Instead, it was the shining face of this really young nice girl going, do you want to have some fun, let's go leave and like spend time with friends. She had no idea what was going on, and
mm-hmm,
that was when you're describing all of this, like that God's like that's like in that moment when you were talking about how you were on your couch, like he didn't greet you with, "Oh, you're such a horrible, shameful person. Time
yeah,
to die now. You're really
yeah,
useless." It was
yeah.
like, "No, like actually, how would you like it if you lived better than this? I would love to help out." Um, but I did want to ask you on that, like if you've experienced so much of the world in the aspect of the sex, the drugs, the alcohol, the things that really can numb all the pain. Do you still struggle at all with wanting to go back to those things or missing those things? Like, and this may even sound very strange, but I think in singleness, like there's such there's so many avenues to take as a single person to kind of get that sexual aspect of it. Even for
Yeah,
believers, that temptation of just like, I can relieve this somehow.
yeah.
Um, and for you who's actually tasted these things with people and like relationships and gone through that hard, is that especially hard now that you're a believer that you're like, okay, I know I can't do these things anymore, but like I could?
Yes, definitely. And I've actually spent a good amount of time talking to friends about this of two things. And this is a little bit of a tangent, but one thing that has really stuck with me is that if I could go back, if I could, they tell you, as a kid, like, don't do drugs, don't do alcohol, and like all that stuff, because it's bad. But what I would like to convey to younger people is when you do that, you are setting yourself up for forever disappointment. Because and sorry, this is a little bit of a TMI, but I've had the highest highs humanly achievable all in the same day. I've allowed myself to have substances, have sex, have all of the things that as humans get us as high as possible. Drugs
Yeah.
that induce an overdose of serotonin, sex in any way, shape, form with whoever you want. I said yes to literally anything and everything that I had or wanted. And now I've tasted that and everything else is slightly less sweet. And I struggle with that. I struggle with even on the bestest days, you're kind of like, oh, I know it could be slightly better. And that's false better. Like I recognize that that's not
Yeah.
real goodness, but physically and in my sense, it was good. It felt really good. And
Yeah.
I have struggled a lot with the desire of wanting to go back to that. And like, even I always say, I'm like, I just want one little hit. Like, I don't need the whole bottle. I don't need, whatever. I just want like a little taste just to calm the nerves, like all of that stuff. Oh, sorry. Um, and that's hard. And I recognize that I didn't understand this at the time, but I made that process harder on myself than it would ever have to be because if you haven't experienced that high, especially if you haven't packaged it all up, you don't entirely know that what you're missing. And
Yeah.
so that has definitely been a struggle. I have also and take this for what it is because I'm still sort of unpacking this and learning this with the Lord. But I try to remind myself of the goodness of what this is. And my brother, who is a he's now sober, but was a drug addict for a really long time, um, taught me a concept that's like play the tape forward. And when we do something like if we go back to drugs even for one night, if we drink even for one day, whatever, it's going to feel great right then. And ultimately, it's going to solve your problems. But if you play that tape forward, what is it doing? Like, what problems are you adding on to that one good moment? And so I spend a lot of time thinking about that of like how one indulgence in those things can just unravel a whole system and at the cost of the hope and the joy and the peace that I feel right now. And like, do those outweigh the having that moment of goodness? And so far, by the grace of God, thank you, Jesus, they have not. I've chosen that over and over. But I will also say that I recognize it myself, and I'm 3 years now, it'll be 3 years, yeah, 3 years this year, sort of away from that lifestyle. I know I'm still so susceptible and so vulnerable to that, that I have chosen for myself to really keep myself out of almost all of those situations. Like and
Yeah.
it feels cold probably to a lot of people, but I don't go to places where I know, like even if I know what type of music they're gonna play, like I know that music is going to tickle the brain just a little bit, and I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna relive an old memory, and then I'm gonna get my phone out. I'm gonna look at old pictures, and then I'm gonna be like, "Oh, that outfit was really cute," and then I'm gonna be like, "Wait, I still have that outfit. I'm gonna try it on," and then all of a sudden the music is coming on, and it's just this baby, baby, baby step for me. And I was like, those baby steps are what will lead me down to
Hmm.
saying yes to the wrong person or whatever. So I personally at this moment like really am staying away from a lot of those circumstances that would even trigger something for me. But
Yeah.
100%. And I think that's also part of what makes Christianity hard is because I know that when I'm having a hard time or I'm in a painful part, I'm like, I know within 20 minutes that I could solve this problem, feel better from this problem. I could go to the grocery store, I could call a friend, I could text a guy, I could literally anything. And to say, no, I'm going to sit with this instead. And that might take hours, days, months, weeks, whatever versus this 20-minute solution is really hard. And in those moments, I can't choose that for myself. I've tried so many times. I have to get on my knees and I have to say, God, I want this. Please hold my hand so tight. And I run a lot. I always tell people, I'm like, if you hear that I went on an 8 mile run, I was fighting some demons that day. Like God and I really needed to work some things out. Um, and yeah, it's an ongoing struggle. I anticipate that it will always be an ongoing struggle. I think that will probably be an ongoing consequence, if you will, of past decisions that I've made. But I am also really convicted and really believe that by the grace of God, if I keep fixing my eyes on Him alone, that those things will slowly grow more and more dim, and that I will continue to make different choices moving forward, but
Yeah.
also with the wisdom of making sure that I stay out of those environments as much as possible as well and set myself up for success.
Well, it's such a good segue into the singleness that, you've been talking about so much on your content because you are, I'm thinking this lady's 41, which I think you look beautiful, so don't feel bad.
Thank
I you said you're 41 and I was like, "Oh, I don't think she what?" Um, but I on top of that, like, you just I can't help but wonder if the enemy at times really discourages you of like you did all this stuff, you wasted so much time. So now you're 41, you don't have kids, you're not married, you're not going anywhere. And I can't help but wonder like if that is something that discourages you at times that you feel like, okay, I lived this life and then I didn't do any of these things I could have done or met this person or been in this place or whatever it is, and then trying to also like love the singleness, but at the same time like wanting that companionship to help with the hard days. I mean, that's one of the
Yeah.
I think that at least for me, that's the biggest blessing about having a companion is honestly when life is hard, they're there. That's
Mhm.
the huge aspect, at least for women, I guess. For me, it's that's how I feel. It's just like I've got a friend that's
Yeah,
present. Um, is that something that is hard for you or that you think about?
definitely. Definitely. And again, like really working with God on this, but if I let myself get carried away, like I run into that whole hamster wheel of you were so stupid. How did you do this for 20 years? Like I feel so aware of the fact that a lot of my circumstances are self-induced. Like, to some degree, nobody forced me here, and it could look different had I made different decisions. And I've gone on like either side of that pendulum where I'm like just brutal with myself. And I'm like, you're such an idiot. You should have known better. And then I swing to the far other side where I'm like, a lot of this was the birth of coping mechanisms for a situation you didn't know how to handle. And then
Yeah.
I kind of play full victim and I take no ownership for it. And I feel like God has really helped me kind of bring that to the middle where some of it was circumstantial and other parts of it are 100% my responsibility. But I also feel like he has brought me into a place, and it's an ongoing thing because day to day this can fluctuate, but really brought me into a space of that forgiveness isn't just like, okay, well, it happened. Forgiveness is the breeding ground for repair and like picking up broken shards of glass and like putting them together in different ways. And
Hmm.
there's a piece of when I go running, there's a sidewalk that I run past that has this really giant hole in it. And somebody has gone out there with a ton of like little beautiful colored pieces of mosaic tile and filled it in. And I think about that spot a lot in my life. And I'm like, that is what Jesus has done with my story of I was a sidewalk. I had a gaping hole in it, and he didn't fill it in. He didn't make me a full sidewalk again. He replaced it with something that looks very, very different, but has added so much beauty to it. And he's
Hmm.
taken a really big mess that I've made and he's created it to be unique and powerful and memorable. I don't remember any other pieces of the sidewalk that I run past, but I remember that every single time I run past. I'm like, oh, here's the beautiful part where like little mosaic tiles are.
Hmm.
And I think that that is what God is doing with my circumstances and even helping. Like, I used to think, oh, I need God to forgive me. I feel like I'm working through that. And now he's like, I need you to forgive yourself so that I can move on, but also so that I can walk freely in whatever comes next. I'm going to pay the price of some of the decisions that I've made for the rest of my life. If I get married and it's at 45, some of that is the outcome of the fact that for 20 years I was all over the place. But I do believe that God redeems stories is such like another catchphrase, but like he restores stories. He restores stories that have big time gaps and big pieces missing, and he somehow merges those timelines back together in a way that they fit well and they work
Hmm.
well. And I think to double down on that, he helps us recognize how those can be used for purpose and as a gift. Not to say that I don't think that God and myself would be like, wow, I wish we did this differently. But I think he also is helping me understand that like it can look all sorts of backwards. You could have broken that glass vase into a million different pieces, and that isn't what I would want for you. I would want for that glass vase to always be the glass vase. But just because we got a little bit slower and to the point where you can hold flowers doesn't mean you can't be a vase and that you can't live a full life as a vase that holds flowers, if that makes sense. Kind of a weird analogy, but
Yeah.
um I just I do struggle with that. I do struggle with that, especially from the perspective of singleness and having questions about like, biologically, will I be able to have kids? Did I screw it up from a time perspective? Did I screw it up from a physical perspective? I mean, I was crazy. I was doing bad things to my body. So I'm like, have I just totally messed all of this up? But I'm like, like there's a time and a place. You need to process those things. I really think this is a part of like, how to hold a funeral for your hopes and your dreams is part of that is
Yeah.
also being the sitting with yourself and having an honest conversation about where your responsibility lies in that and the death of your hopes and your dreams, grieving it and forgiving yourself. Um, but I
Hmm.
also think that it is sorry, a little bit lost my train of thought, but that God can take that sorry, another part is like this is why the funeral is so important because until you sit down and you have that honest conversation with yourself, and you grieve it and then you forgive yourself, you really can't see the beauty of what lies ahead, even if it looks different than what you think, because your eyes will always be a little bit turned back on the
Yeah.
what ifs and should have and all of that stuff. But when you have a funeral and you put the ground over that dead body and you walk away, that's when you can say, okay, that was, that is, that has been, it's dead now. And I'm forward focused on the beautiful things that are to come.
Yeah. Well, and when you it's interesting, I think, because when you talk about like that's another thing that I think is so hard about being a believer too, is that like my coping mechanism naturally is just to decide I will not hope. Therefore, I will not be
Mhm.
disappointed. So I can
Yes.
just
Yeah.
move on. Which really
Yep.
you're not, right? But that's my tendency. It's like if I just make this seem less than it is, or if I
Hmm.
just say, this is God's will, and I actually don't know that, it just makes it
Yeah.
good for me to keep going so that I don't get disappointed, so I don't get excited, so I don't go through any pain. That's what I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but the crazy part, like with what you're talking about with the funeral, is like you still hold space. Like Christianity allows you to hold space. Like you still can dream. And that's the scary part, is like your dreams are in his hands, but you can tell them, you can tell him your dreams as much as you want. You can be honest and real about how much you want them. But that's the hard part, is like you can't it doesn't actually work to just pretend that
Yeah.
you can don't want the dream anymore. You actually have to
Yeah.
trust in the question mark of my dream. Like, will it happen?
Yeah.
I don't know,
Yeah.
but I really want it to. And that's
Yeah.
like, I think that's another aspect of Christianity where it's like Jesus is so, it's so real. And that he's like, so we're not actually gonna just ignore that. But you will have to trust me with this. And you're like, I don't want to do that, because what
Yeah.
if you say no?
Yeah.
And, you know, uh, the Lord knows, and like he has good intended for us, like only good, so it's like he knows that the best plans, what he has, is greater than we could think of, but of course we don't
Mhm.
know, so he gets that we're
Yeah.
confused. But
Yeah.
I think that's like I see that too in your post, where you're just like wrestling, and you're like, it was interesting too when you were talking about like making your channel more of a single focused and singles focused channel, and you were saying like, I'm afraid to do that because I don't really want to just talk to singles. And it was almost like I could hear in your voice like this like aspect too of like, what if I'm gonna start doing a singles channel because I'm just doomed to be single forever and I don't want that? And it was just like so real. I was like 100% been there so many times and so many things where I'm like, Lord, please, no, I don't want to do this, because what if this is like you're telling me this is my destiny for life
You
and
know?
I can't
Yeah.
do that? But I think that's like one of the things I just love too, is like you're just so, yeah, it's just so real about that, like
Well, thank
holding
you.
space for your dreams. Like you actually can dream in Christianity. It's actually like dream as much as you want. Like give me
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
biggest dreams you've got. It's
Yeah.
just you can't guarantee those dreams, but you can't even guarantee them if you're not a Christian either, you know?
Yeah. 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 100%. And I think I'm trying to think how to explain this, but dreams exist on both sides, right? Christian or not Christian,
Right.
and they will happen or they won't happen on either side. But I think what happens, and actually this can happen on either side as well, when we don't trust God with the dreams, not that they'll come to fruition, but that He will hold them safely and He'll recognize them as something that we deeply desire, and He will guide them based off of what is for our good and for His glory. If we don't truly do that, then those dreams may or may not come true, but we are going to feel so exhausted because our grip is so tight around them. But
Yeah.
the freedom that we get when we surrender them truly to the Lord is they still may or may not happen, but at minimum, you're not going to have a tired hand from having your grip so tight, you know? And like, I just, that's sort of what I want to help people, like encourage people in is like, this isn't surrender your dreams in that like, you got to kill them and be like, okay, well, they're just not going to happen. It's just the loosening of the grip. It's just giving your hand a break from holding on to them because this ultimately isn't doing anything. It's just giving you like tendonitis. Like let it go so that at least it's going to suck if your dreams don't come true and you have like a really tight fist. At least at minimum, your dreams didn't come true and your hand is still relaxed. And I think that is what it really means to surrender those to the Lord. But the other thing that I encourage people, and this is something I feel like the Lord put on my heart and has been just so abundant in helping me process, is I could not lay down my hopes and my dreams, one on my own. That has to come from the power of the Lord and the Holy Spirit. Like
Hmm.
it is not within our control. And two, I wasn't really able to start doing that process in a really meaningful way until I started asking the Lord, show me what good means. Not what I think it should mean, not what I want it to mean, but show me what good means to you.
Hmm.
Because when he says, I have good things in store for you, well, I've got a whole list of what I think good looks like. And he's going to fall short of that list inevitably because these are not ultimately always for my good. And they're all things of earth. But when God was like, let me show you what is good, this
Hmm.
list was so much easier to surrender. The hopes and the dreams were so much easier to surrender. Not that that didn't come at pain. A funeral, point blank, has pain in it, just period. But understanding what good looks like from the Lord's perspective will make you more brave, will make you more courageous, will make you more soft, will make you more willing. Like he has shown me that, to me, I'm like, goodness would be not being single and getting married. And he's like, goodness would be having a close relationship with me and in fostering and nurturing the marriage that you and I have together and using the spaces of pain and singleness to help other people. That is
Hmm.
what goodness is. These other things are good, but they are not goodness. And once I started having those conversations with the Lord, and I had to get raw with him, I had to scream and to shout and be really be like, that doesn't look good, that doesn't feel good, and just really consistently ask him, show it to me, teach it to me, explain it to me, confirm it to me, all of this stuff. Like, I really feel like he started to open my eyes to that. And I have an ever growing, I'll be learning this till I die, but like a much deeper understanding now of what good looks like to him, which has just fully
Hmm.
relaxed my body and loosened my grip around my own hopes and dreams.
Hmm. Well, can I ask, just to kind of wrap it up, because I'm curious, what would be your dream wedding if we're
My
starting
dream.
from the begin? Yeah, if we're starting from the beginning of the day, what would what would that look like?
Oh, that has morphed 1,000 times. But I think if I were to get married tomorrow, my perfect wedding would be to have as many people as possible there, whatever size venue we have to be in, whatever. There's just so many friends and family that I would love to be there. I so desperately want it to be a celebration, obviously, of marriage, but it is such. I'm like so excited. I'm gonna give a sermon from from the the front of that church. I just know it because I'm like, it is. I hope that that wedding represents the goodness of the Lord and like that He is a God of hearing our prayers, of hearing our cries, that he understands the pain of waiting, that we see the goodness of the Lord on this earth, but ultimately like it's a celebration of the fact of an earthly representation of the marriage that I have with Jesus. And like that marriage will carry me a million times over. And that's one reason I want all my friends and family to be there because I'm like, I'm excited for my husband. I'm so excited that he's here. But if I can share with you one more time the love of Jesus and the freedom that I know, like that to me is the best kind of wedding. Like I really genuinely want to talk about that at my wedding. I'm like, we'll go through the vows, but like let's talk talk about the goodness of Jesus in this wedding. And then at the end, I just want to have the biggest celebration. I want people to stay as long as they want. I just want endless food and like it just to be really fun and just so community oriented, and people feel like they just have hours to catch up with new people and old people and people they haven't seen. And I just want it to be a really giant party and celebration with all my friends and family.
Oh
And I'll
my
probably even live
goodness.
stream. I was like, we're gonna live stream it. I want even Instagram and TikTok and all
Yeah.
those. Yeah.
I was gonna say all of us want to be seeing
Yeah.
this wedding now. It
I
sounds
would
like
love
so
that.
fun.
Oh, I would love that so much. So
It
much.
sounds like a Christian version of my big fat Greek wedding.
Yeah.
You know, like just everyone's like, yes, the big dream, like all of the big things. That sounds so fun. And
Oh,
I will
thank you.
pray for you that that will
I so
happen.
appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. And I love what you're doing. I think this is so cool. I'm so excited to continue hearing all the interviews that you're doing. And I mean, like I said, the podcast name alone just speaks to my heart in so many ways. I love it.
Yeah, oh, thank you. Well, Alexandra,
Yeah.
it's been such a gift to talk with you. I love your
Thank you.
channel. It'll
Thank
be
you. Thank
linked below for people listening. Please do. Her Instagram is really active and live. And then from there, she has like a YouTube channel and a Substack and different links you can find. But Alexandra, thank you again. I've had a blast. So it's just passed
me
super quick
too.
for me.
Me too. I love chatting with you. Thank you so much for inviting me to do this.
You're welcome. And I'm glad you wore your overalls. I saw that post and I was like, I hope she wears those overalls. I have overalls, love them. Women wear overalls is like part of my mantra. 100%.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, bye, Alexandra.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.